I heard a statistic from Keith Weed the other day. He's the CMO of Unilever. And I'm sure this is common sense when you actually think about it. But he said the next billion people in the world to come online are going to come online specifically through mobile. And this is a real issue for us. 28% is the figure that mobile smartphones are going to hit in the UK alone this Christmas when there's a surge of sales. That's 28%, which is near 30%, which becomes a bit of a tipping point, a bit of an inflection point. And that means that there's going to be more and more people comfortable with using your services and your products online wherever they are.
5 things, I contend, 5 major things are going on. The level of connectivity in the world, and I'm going to go through each of these, a couple of slides on each. Mobility, the impact of social media, what that means in terms of the war for consumer attention, how we get consumers to engage with our brands, and finally, what all those forces mean for the end of the digital divide and the implications of the end of the digital divide on our businesses. First of all, mobility. Mark mentioned the number of smartphones in circulation next year. 2011, more smartphones globally than feature phones. 2012, and bear in mind we're almost in 2011 now, so 14, 15 months away. The first point is more smartphones than feature phones globally within a year. Within 18 months, more smartphones than PCs. This is interesting. All US internet time condensed into 1 hour, where would that hour be spent? And now we're starting to talk about where our consumers' attention is and where we can engage with them. The big one, the grey one, is just other, so there's loads of stuff in there, but the biggest one is social networks. So almost a quarter of that hour is spent in social networks. So almost a quarter of all of our consumers' time in the US, and it's a very similar figure in the UK and most of Western Europe, is spent on social networks, blogs, community forums, this type of thing. The computer, an industrial metaphor. My grandmother doesn't want gigahertz, NVIDIA, DVD ROMs, and so on and so forth. It's alienating, intimidating positioning of the most powerful product in our lives has been positioned as if it's an industrial engineered product. And that alienated significant portions of the community and prevented them from having rich, engaging experience, and meant, as marketers, we were still justified relying on unconnected channels because there's still a lot of people spending time engaging there. However, this year it changed, not necessarily because of the iPad, although the iPad's the first manifestation of it. These aren't computers. These are coffee machines, microwave, they're consumer electronic devices, and that's the difference. My grandmother picks that up, and it's a photo album, it's a book, it's the television, it's a chessboard. These factors, these 5 factors, are heading up to a perfect storm. So people are engaged in channels where we're not spending the money. So they're in connected places, having connected experiences and connected interactions at an ever-increasing pace.
What I want to focus on today is to demonstrate how the connected consumer can really help your brand. And the point I want to make is that if we want to understand the impact the connected consumer is having on your brand, then in many ways we've got to ignore the advances in technology, the explosion in platforms that have helped create the connected consumer, but instead focus on the traditional human behaviours that technology and those platforms facilitate. And the point I want to make is that for all this connectivity, for all this technology and advancement, in many ways we've gone back. This technology has enabled consumers to rediscover and reinvent traditional behaviours, traditional ways of working, but on a scale that was previously unimaginable. I'm also very quickly going to, I think, pick Rick's theme up about this idea about how do we get brands to engage with us. And I want to talk about a theory called cognitive surplus and explain and give you 2 or 3 simple strategies of how brands can get their fair share of that cognitive surplus. Let's have a look at how consumers are talking about brands in this connected age. And I want to move right up to the present day and share with you some data that was out this month. and it looks at 3,000 UK consumers, and it says that on average they talk about 70 brands a week, and the vast majority of those brands, of those conversations, are very positive. What always interests me, though, is that within the marketing organisations of many global companies, what they obsess about isn't the big numbers, it's not the positive conversations that happen offline, but they obsess about and focus on and fret about the negative conversations, the small number of negative conversations that happen online. Last year, we did our own proprietary research at RAPP looking into the phenomenon of the trusted stranger, the idea that consumers go online and actively seek out reviews from people that they've never ever met before, and importantly, those reviews matter. And many, many brands recognise the value of taking the trusted stranger to the heart of their sites and the heart of their brands. And this is just, as does e-commerce site, reviews all over the place, and I think what they've realised is that actually negative comments are not something to be scared about, but actually something to encourage. Negative comments can actually help the purchasing decision. I think consumers aren't stupid, and they know that every review is not going to get 5 stars, and actually having a review there that's critical adds credibility to the reviews that sit around it. And I think there's another phenomenon around something that's described as a sort of a livable weakness. What actually happens in the purchasing decision when you're close to making that purchasing choice? You look at customer reviews and you say, okay, what's the worst this thing can do to me, and can I live with it? So what I hope I've done today is just put that thought in your mind that actually it's not about technology, it's about human behaviours, and it's understanding that what connectivity has done has reinvented traditional behaviours and traditional ways of thinking. And that actually connected consumers, apart from those odd moments of brand lashes, are actually a force for good, and that if we want to be able to engage with them, well, it's about doing things for and with, by creating these sort of socially creative tools, utilities and assets.
Today is really just about sharing the story of what we've been through and what we've learned, and it is a good news story, so I hope at the end of it there's some learnings for you guys. I've been sales and marketing director for Eurostar since 2008. Since 2005 I was sales director, and then on the 11th of September 2008, you may remember there was a fire in the tunnel, in the Eurotunnel, which closed one of 6 sections till February the 23rd. So we had 6 months of limited operation and complete nightmare. And what's amazing is the way we communicated operationally. It wasn't necessarily brand communication. In fact, we took a decision to stop all brand communication during that time. Our brand positioning is all about extending our reach. We don't want people to say, I went to Paris. We want people to say, I went to Paris on Eurostar, which they generally do. You don't people say, I went to Barcelona on BA, but you do hear, oh yeah, we went to Paris on Eurostar. And that's really important to reinforce the brand, is that we feel like we hold people's hand throughout their experiences, and using advocacy to talk about enriching those experiences seems perfect for us. So we recognised there were 4 key areas that people want to experience from all the interviews that we did. There was fashion, art, food and music. Those are the things that people want to consume when they're going to trips in Northern Europe. So we took some bloggers that weren't necessarily travel bloggers, but they were bloggers on these subjects. So you can see, if you can see some of these numbers, massive, wide audiences. Not people necessarily looking to engage just in Eurostar, but looking to engage in their own environments. So that a really successful outreach programme. And we were feeling quite smug and quite happy about the results it created. And during the recession, we were having a record year. It's about 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. I'm lying there thinking, go to sleep. All week you've been dreaming of your bed. And my phone rang, and it was the customer service director who was on a train up from Guildford. And he said, what are you doing today? Can you get into the office? It doesn't look good. I'll remember those words for the rest of my life. It doesn't look good. We think there's a train stuck in the tunnel. It doesn't look good if you can get in. And there was 5 of us that day that spent the day in the office We phoned as many people as we could get to actually work in the terminal, because as the day progressed and we realised we had no services running, the crowds gathered and gathered and gathered, and the media turned up. And this is what was happening. In normal circumstances, this is what the kind of lovely tweets that we were getting, you know, really positive, wonderfully futuristic and sciencey, fiction-y trains, little did they know. You know, just book Eurostar for Bell Camp next month, really lovely stuff. And then during disruptions, you know, the top one's quite, at least you got off in Paris, I'll be effing Hull. You know, it took me almost 7 hours to get from London to Paris. You know, just Eurostar broken, their reaction, closed customer service desks. And this is the thing, we were hearing people's issues through Twitter. And it was completely the opposite reaction to how we dealt with the tunnel fire, where we were making decisions about what we communicated and sending them out through all our different channels. This time, they were telling us where we were going wrong. We were feeding it back to the operational centre, and they were coming out. And it clearly wasn't a quick enough process for communication. I sent an email to JetBlue. I don't know if you've heard of what happened with JetBlue. So JetBlue, an example of a business who had been through a similar issue. In February 2007, they had something like 19 planes frozen to the tarmac. They had a complete disaster, real customer service and operational disaster. One of the things I learned from JetBlue is how to deal with these terrorists, which they call them, which is these really negative bloggers that are trying to create this real negative buzz around your brand. And they said, take them offline, do what you can, just get them out of that arena. So what we did is we went one further, we brought them in. So we had 10 of the most negative bloggers, including one woman who'd set up her own website called Eurostar Fails. And we brought them in and we sat them down in front of the CEO or the COO or the commercial director and just listened to their feedback. Because, you know, we'd launched this independent review and we'd said we'll never let it happen again. But by listening to them, by taking them in and making them feel they're not just, you know, commenting in the ether, we actually really genuinely care about what you went through. And believe me, some of the stuff we heard was really upsetting, and was good for the chief executive here to make sure he did everything he could to ensure we never put people through that again, and we won't. It's listening and responding, which doesn't just mean responding through tweets, but actually responding as a business. We now also have a programme that supports this, which works with our speech analytics in the contact centre. So every month we're actually reporting on what are those issues, what are the things that people are talking about most, so we can actually adapt our products and our service.